A beautiful good afternoon to you. Today we're coming live from Panuka Farm II. Those that follow our social media channels, be it Facebook and YouTube, will know that we are trying to develop a new farm called Panuka Farm II. So, like we have indicated in some of the write-ups, when you are opening a new farm, one of the first things that you've got to do, besides, ensuring that you've got water, is the issue of fencing. Very, very critical issue, because what you want to ensure is that you mark your boundaries, and also whatever enterprise that you're going to be doing inside is actually protected from any infiltration by animals and the like. So this is in the midst of nowhere. It's a bush, um, but we are making some progress. And so one of the first things that we've done here is to do the fencing. So sometimes you actually buy a farm which is much bigger, and fencing it might actually put some holes in your pockets. Common sense dictates that demarcate the land, look at the area where you're going to do some production, and that's the area where you're going to focus on first to do the fencing. And then you can mark your territory on the remaining land, and you proceed to do the fencing when you've got the resources. So if you've got 1,000 hectares or whatever number of hectares, look at the land where you're going to first focus on in terms of production for whatever business you want to do, whether it's livestock or crop. And then afterwards, you can then fence the rest of the land. So that's exactly what we have done here at Panuka Farm II. The farm is much bigger, and fencing this land in Zambian kwacha terms at present, that would cost you in the range of about 400,000 for us to just fence the entire farm. So common sense again dictates that look at where you're going to do production and focus on that, fence off that, and then proceed with your production. And then when you've got the resources, you can proceed with the rest of the land. Now, here where you are seeing, what we did is that we actually brought a grader and then demarcated this land. And what you do is that you put the fence on the left, so that on the right you actually see that we've got a good pathway where even vehicles can pass as we're going around to just do inspection of the land. Very, very critical, because what you want is to make sure that you've got access to the entire farm. You can drive around on the fence, but this also serves as a fire guard. Remember, the other side is someone else's farm. It's still a thicket, it's a bush, and should they decide to burn the grass when it's dry, we want to make sure that we actually protect the farm inside. So that's very, very critical inside. So fire guard, but it also allows you to pass with ease. Okay, so let's tag along and just see what has been done so far here. So inside here, it's a thicket. It's virgin land. But in this section of the farm, somehow it's a bit stony. And again, that's something that you've got to do when you're just starting a farm. Just check the land. It's not all portions of the land that can actually be used for, say, crop production. So you've got to map the land, make sure that you're very sure about the features that are on the farm, the nature of the the land, so that you really demarcate and do some very thorough planning based on the land. And even issues of soil testing, very, very critical, so that you know where you can do some production. Now, one other tidbit that we can actually provide is that when you're also developing a farm, that concept of cheap can be expensive in the long run actually does apply. Better take your time, but make sure that the material that you're using, whether it's fencing or whatever, is strong enough and durable enough. So for these Y standards called the fence posts, you can actually use wooden poles, but the lifespan might not be that long for these Y standards. So these are expensive, but I think you are guaranteed that they'll actually last you for quite a number of years. Some people, to reduce on costs, are using those round poles, but those sometimes actually do get rusty, and then along the way they fall off. So avoid cutting corners when you're developing a farm, because somehow that cost will catch up with you along the way. So just take that into account. So here it was a thicket we had to clear. So we've so far covered almost 300 to 400 meters from there. Okay. Now, remember the tidbit that I actually gave you just a while ago? Our farm actually proceeds going this side, but what we did is to demarcate the farm here based on the resources that we've got now, but also based on just our planning. So the farm goes beyond this point, so we are going to actually fence off this in phase 2, but we had to cut it here. So we'll have two sections. The thinking is that we'll have some, crop production on the one that we fenced, and then when we fence off the other one, that's where we can actually accommodate some kind of, livestock, be it, cows, goats, and the like. So you need to have this demarcation to avoid, your own livestock actually causing damage to your crop section. So that kind of planning, very, very critical. Again, you see that we are consistent. We actually went round the whole farm creating this fire guard. But now here, quite interesting, we actually created a much bigger road, because even the other side, it's our farm. So what we did is to put the wire right in the middle so that we can drive on this side. And when we fence off the other section, inside there, then that would be our passage. Okay, so again, just that kind of thinking is something that you need to deploy as you are planning your farm. And then one other tidbit is that if you have completely no idea about what you want to do on the farm in terms of infrastructure, try by all means to put your infrastructure in the corners. Avoid putting infrastructure like housing right at the center of the farm. You might have issues in terms of change of use. So try and put just farm dwellings in the corner and leave the center of the farm, because as you proceed, new ideas do emerge. So very, very critical, tidbits to take into account. So coming up here, we've put a gate here. This is now going to lead to the portion B of the farm. So here is where people can, pass, and this is the bigger gate that can accommodate vehicles. And so once you pass here, then we'll be going straight to the other side of, Panuka Farm II. So that's the thinking around why we had to put a gate on this section. So we'll have staff that will be staying the other side of the farm, and then they'll be using this gate to come to the other section of the farm. Now, here's a scary one, but don't get scared. But these are realities for those of us who've been buying land in traditional, areas. There are a few surprises that would actually emerge along the way, and even ourselves, we had one surprise. Given that the sellers, there was no food disclosure. Apparently, there were some graves in one section of the farm, and those graves, because it's been a long time, they were actually not declared to us at the time when we were buying. Now, these are realities when you're buying land. So try by all means to use your own intelligence to really comb through the area. If you see anything suspicious, check it out. But these are realities. So what you're actually seeing, this area that we had to cordon off, apparently there are some graves in there. So when that information got to us, we had to just go around it. So along the way, we actually had to lose about a hectare of land, because naturally you can't fence a gravesite. It's quite critical these days, and it's very good that in most of the chiefdoms now, when you're actually getting cleared, the chief and his or her people, they usually come on site, and those are the custodians of the land. They will tell you if at all there is anything, so that you clear that off before they sign off the paperwork when you're buying land. So that's very, very critical. So take notes. Don't just buy land blindly. Try and deploy a bit of intelligence to really understand the land, to avoid any sort of shenanigans. All right, so this other section is now where we're clearing to do production. So we've cleared roughly about 6 to 7 hectares so far. It's still work in progress. This is where production is poised to take place. So very, very critical to uproot the roots so that you don't have issues with the tractor as it rips or plows through the land. So it's still work in progress, but we've cleared quite a bit of land. Mr. Panuka is an environmentalist, and so we try and abide by the ethos of natural resource conservation. And so you actually see that the larger component of Panuka Farm II is still a thicket. We've preserved quite a lot of forestry. So again, that's another lesson. Avoid cutting trees unnecessarily if you have no plan for the land. So just concentrate where production is designated to happen, and that's why you need to plan the area quite thoroughly to avoid making those mistakes of just cutting trees, and then you realize you actually don't need to use the land. So we've already done the water siting. Ideally, we should have started with the water before even fencing, but sometimes you've got to use your gut feeling that all will be well. Yeah. So we've already done the water siting, and I think I did share in previous videos. So this is the point where we're supposed to drill a borehole, and we're going for a commercial borehole. I think if you do these domestic boreholes, sometimes you end up with so many of them. Again, if you've got the resources, I think, and you mean to do business in terms of production, go for a commercial borehole so that it can save you for a while. So we are at the vantage point here. So this is the area that we've so far cleared. And where we came from is where you can see some trees the other side. So that's your 360 view of Panuka Farm II. And somewhere in the yonder there, you can actually see where we've already started building some farm dwellings. So that's a 360 view of Panuka Farm II. Work in progress. And where we are here on the vantage point is where we actually intend to put the tank. So coincidentally, the borehole is scheduled to be drilled down there, and then we can actually bring the tank stand at an anthill. Now, why do it at an anthill? You're actually trying to gain some height. the higher tank stand is, the more pressure you're actually bound to get from the tank stand. So here we've got almost 2 meters at this anthill, so we'd want to use it, erect the tank stand there, and put, say, 12,000 liter tank or even more. So if you can get to about 8 to 10 meters height, that's very good, to propel, the pressure for irrigation. That's something that we've done at Panuka Farm 1. So again, we're just using the lessons learned from Panuka Farm 1, to develop Panuka Farm 2. And that's why they always tell you, start small, and then with the lessons that you pick from your small venture, then you can actually do some incremental projects to avoid making fatal mistakes. Okay, so let's keep going. We just check out at the main entrance how the fencing was done, and then we can continue to share other tidbits about Panuka Farm 2. So this is the campsite for our team that is doing the fencing and also constructing the farm dwellings. So these are our implements, the shovels, and some of the drums that they're using for water. So yeah, so this section is one of the thickets that we've actually left untouched. We're not going to cut the trees here. It will remain a sanctuary forest. So we're now walking to the main entrance of the farm. I showed you the other gate, but that's an inner gate that will be connecting Panuka farm with the 2 sections. But this is our main entrance gate. So we need to clear this. This is the entrance. It's work in progress. This is where we'll be entering from. And again, when you buy a new farm, you find especially the road infrastructure is so bad, and that's the case with us. Right here where the designated entrance for the farm is, water does settle, so we had to get about 3 truckloads of gravel, and this is what we've put here. So it's got a mixture of stones, and we may be slightly late to have brought it, given that it's already rain season, which will temporarily pose a bit of a challenge because we'll have porridge or the mud. Already when I was coming here, you could see, because it was wet underneath, the car almost got a bit stuck. But anyway, it's a 4x4, so it was an easy job. So we had to drain the water so that it goes this side for us to put this gravel. So you've got to be ready to invest a bit in road maintenance and things like that, because sometimes and quite often road infrastructure is actually bad. That is leading to most of these farm areas. So this has nothing to do with actual production, but again, it's quite inevitable. Some kind of upfront corporate social responsibility, because it's a public road, and we had to just invest by bringing in 3 truckloads of gravel to make sure that the place is passable. Okay, so let's so this is the main entrance, and like I demonstrated the other side, what we did is to make sure that we clear this road. It's an inner road, for us to pass, and you put your wire on the left so that you've got access, for your drive around the farm when you're inspecting, and that becomes the main road again that you use when just going around, the farm. Of course, the zoom feature of this camera is not very good, but I wish you could see that in the background, way some kilometers away, we've got a quarry. So again, if you've got a farm so near to a quarry like that, that poses a huge hazard in terms of crop production. But luckily, we had to secure a farm far away from the quarry. Apparently, actually, before we bought this farm, we found land just near the quarry. Good land, but those are some of the things that we took into account, the issue of hazards. And so when you look at issues of food safety, you've got to take into account what's around the land that you've bought. Otherwise, it might actually prove to be a huge hazard to your enterprise. So take keen interest to really ask what's around, okay? It can contaminate your water and even just the crops. So please make sure that you are interested in looking around just beyond the land that you want to buy. So luckily, we're actually near some rural primary school that is now being upgraded to a secondary school. So that's our neighbor. So the land actually near us belongs to a government school. So in hindsight, at least we know that issues of road infrastructure, when it's leading to a public school, somehow you get lucky. It probably could be wishful thinking, but I think it's quite a very logical assumption that the road that is leading to a public school would always be looked into. It would not degenerate into a state that is so bad and impassable. So this newly created road within the farm is already proving to be a very critical asset of the farm. We can take walks around. So we're just trying to clear some of the sharp trees that would prick the tires. In no time, it will actually be a very smooth road that we'll be using to go around the farm. So yeah, when we do coaching sessions for people who are starting farms, I think the information that I've provided in this video, I hope turns out to be very handy. Fencing, very critical. And by the way, if possible, make sure that your neighbor is around when you're starting to fence. Otherwise, it's quite costly for you to start making alterations. So make sure your neighbor is there before you put up the fencing. It can be very costly to start doing some reworks. Getting the water, very critical. And of course, you've got to build some farm dwellings from the onset. But all you need is just some modest farm dwellings. Don't go very grandiose with your farm dwellings. Of course, I mean, if you've learned, the factors of production, shelter is one. So at this, you need to have something decent on the farm, but make sure the focus is much more on production, but of course, without watering down on the issue of decency in shelter. So coming along is now the shelter, the farm dwellings that we're now constructing for our workers, the ones that will be here from the onset. So like I guided earlier, farm dwellings always on the corners or at least on the edges of the farm, and the farm offices are actually designated to be somewhere here. This is where we're going to construct the farm offices, the park shed in future, exactly on this spot where you've got these trees. So the planning has already happened, so it's just all about now implementing that plan. That way people know where to cut trees and where not to. So once you plan, at least everybody just tags along. It should be part of your strategic plan. Okay. So just coming up to the farm dwellings. But before we get there, one other issue that is often overlooked at farms is the issue of toilet. Very, very critical. So we've already demarcated here where the toilet is going to be constructed. It's part of the decency, of the farm. What you don't want is your workers going all over the place. So it's something that we've already earmarked and planned. The dimensions are already there, so it's coming up pretty shortly. So these are the initial farm dwellings that you are doing here. This is the tank for water. So we've started with about 3 rooms, 3 by 3, 3 by 3, this one. And then this one is 4 by 3, which is going to be the initial storeroom before we actually construct the farm offices. So progressing very well. So at the far end there is where we're going to put any chemicals and whatever, and then down there we'll put the pallets for the fertilizers and the like. And the other side will be the farm dwellings for the initial workers, the caretakers and the like. And then in an incremental manner, we will proceed to construct more farm dwellings, which will be spread across the farm. And the plan is that the workers must actually be in the corners. It's part also of keeping the farm safe, because the distance is actually quite far apart in terms of the corners of the farm. What you see is that we only cleared where we're actually constructing the initial farm dwellings, but you see that there's vegetation around, and we want to maintain the status quo as is. So that's the other corner. So you see that the farm dwellings are actually engulfed in a little forest there. It's by design. So okay folks, I hope this gives you a very thorough appreciation of Panuka Farm II and what's going on. As we implement these plans, we'll keep you posted. Again, this process, you need to be patient. It takes a while for all these things that I've discussed to get in place. So avoid shortcuts, have a plan, and have some targets when these aspects are actually implemented. So don't be too much in a hurry. Again, don't be too complacent. But be ready. You know that it costs quite a bit of money to get a farm on its feet. So that's been Mr. Panuka. Thank you so much for tagging along. And if you've got some questions, you're free to ask those questions. So, ciao.